the project already, but they require time to submit for the proposal, and it's not easy to
It's not easy for him too.
Sorry. Thank you for
It's not easy for you too. Very, very challenging question.
No. I have to begin once again, as I did with this gentleman's question. These questions are not unique to you. They are not unique to Canton. They are not unique to Vietnam. They are the very same questions that I spent lots of my career trying to solve and answer. Our faculty, back in Fullerton, said, our teaching loads are so heavy, we can't do research. And because we can't do research, we can't get promoted. And that means I'm going to get fired. What can I do? Same exact kind of concern. And it is a concern. And he's listening, I hope. Okay? Because the university has to figure out, and each of the faculties have to figure out some way to integrate this idea of faculty doing research with teaching loads. Now, of course, one of the easy ways is to get a grant, and the grant buys out part of your time. So if the university pays you a certain salary, you put in the grant half of your salary, now your teaching load is only half for the university. Then what does she do? She goes teach somewhere else to make more money. Right? I know. Been there. But it is a constant challenge of knowing how to find. We had to find a department. We call them departments. You call them faculty. We had to find faculty resources to help faculty members who wanted to do research projects to release their time. In other words, if we had a faculty member who cost us $5,000 to teach a class, we could hire a young graduate student for $3,000 to teach the class. So we'd hire the young graduate student for $3,000 and take the other $2,000 and put it toward doing research. So we have to look at unique administrative ways. And so one of the other things that I do at CMEO is to talk about these administrative kinds of solutions to all kinds of problems, one of them being the research. Now, I think there are lots of research activities that all of you can find a way to integrate into your teaching lives. We're not talking about every research project being this huge project that requires 100% of your time every week for a long period of time. Maybe we're talking about a little effort that every time you get an hour or two in a week, you're able to open up that file and you make a little bit more progress. And then in 2 months you look at it and you say, oh, I've made a lot of progress on this. Maybe I'll give it 3 hours next week, So you can think of little ideas of starting to do research projects without getting major funding that's going to take all of your time. As a matter of fact, without doing those kind of things, you won't be very competitive when you do apply. Because when you do apply, funding agents look for experience, and they look for the richness of your ideas. And they can tell when you have no experience and your ideas really are right out of a textbook compared to someone who has some ideas, has some experience, and writes well. So engaging in some kind of little activities, even if it's your own class. I used to sit on many theses up at USSH and Open University, Masters in TESOL. I taught educational technology and research methods in the TESOL programs and did many theses. And many of those theses were based on that person collecting evidence in their own classes. You know that. I think hopefully over the day we can talk about kinds of things we could do to integrate research. Your other point is really cogent as well. The reality is, as all of you know, those of you who understand English, you know, in the world of research, most of the professional journals are in English, unfortunately. Vietnam is finally getting some journals that are in Vietnamese, but you're not going to have a lot of those places for a long time. It's going to take a while for the system in Vietnam to get up. And as you know, if you want to find a place in international standards, you almost have to function in English when you write research. Also, when you do proposals, you know, the proposals are in English. And unless the proposal has been polished with a native speaker, it is a struggle, because people who read proposals can't pick up the ESL markers, you know, and they often sometimes lower the grade because of those ESL markers. So, these questions are about the kinds of things that I will talk to you today. I mean, if we had a class, I have a curriculum, I have a syllabi in my head about research, all right? And these topics are part of that syllabi, of course, because they're part of research. I prefer to discuss the topics by answering questions, because if someone has a vested interest in that material, then the material is better. It's better received. You all have a challenge when you're writing grants, and those grants have to be in English. You all have a challenge to be competitive with the other people who apply, no doubt about it. Unless it happens to be totally limited to Vietnamese applicants, and there are some of those, but usually not. So in doing that, you have to learn how detailed the grant agencies are. I mean, every T must be crossed, every I dotted, every capital letter should be a capital letter. You know, they look at every little thing. And so you have to read the grant documents very clearly. And you have to make sure that you have responded to everything in those grant documents. Make sure that your presentation, and so Dr. Kahn will have this problem with the Swedish. He has to make the proposals coming from the university speak directly to that funding program, to make sure that that funding program will take a second look at what you proposed. Because their first look, they go through and they try to find things that are just not acceptable. Things that didn't address the goals. Things that are outside the area of funding, you know. And so there's a real obligation to make sure that the substance of the proposal fits the guidelines of the granting agency. And that's a task itself. You know, because when I work at CMEO, I help them sometimes with grants, and the Vietnamese can read the documentation. They will come up with a different interpretation than I come up with. And it causes some stress. Why is his interpretation any better than my interpretation? Well, maybe it's not, you know. I mean, I have experience, and English is my native language, and I read between the lines. You can read between the lines in Vietnamese. I can read between the lines in English. That's a difference. I'm sorry. You know, I won't try to understand what the Vietnamese granting agency is trying to get, but I will try to understand what the English granting agency is trying to get. But you have to follow all of those, and then when you get your ideas down, you really need to have some native speakers or really good English people to go over your material and review it and criticize it and correct it. And once again, Vietnam is just not collegial. I share all the time. I have 2 Fulbrights. I was awarded 2 Fulbrights, a Ford Foundation year grant, a VEF year grant. But every time I applied to those things, I had my friends back home read my materials. That's not cheating. I wrote the materials, they read them. And they said, Dennis, you missed this part of your life. Dennis, I didn't understand what you said. And I changed it. I didn't take it personally. And it's not cheating. It's just fixing things so that they are as good as they can possibly be. And you've got to learn to do that in your thing. But I think those are really 2 really good points about the challenges of doing research in Vietnam. Where do you find the time, and how do you be competitive in the granting agencies? Not easy, but there are solutions, and you must. What I want to encourage you is, don't just stop because of any of these things. Don't just say, I'm not going to do anything because my workload is too heavy. I think that's unacceptable. I think we have to find ways of solving the things that are problems for us.
How can we reduce the dependence from the grant agency? How can I do research, do what I like?
You can do what you like, but you cannot get the money. You can do what you like, but you cannot get the money.
Most of the time, the researcher doing research by the research grant, like not what we like.
Yeah.
I understand. What you are talking about the right things. You are talking about the things that challenge us, all of us. And the same in America. The faculty felt that they were driven by the grant agencies, not by the things that needed to be investigated. We want to investigate child abuse. No one's funding child abuse. Well, then you've got to find some other way to fund it, either out of your pocket or other ways. I mean, there are, and that's, once again, that's what a university is for. A university it has to be responsible. It has to generate and take some of that grant money. But as it takes some of that grant money, it also needs to generate some pools that will support faculty who want to do things that are not competitive. They don't have any place to go get the grants, but they still have good ideas. Okay, all of those mechanisms take time, and they take people like you with ideas to challenge the system and to say, Dr. Kwa, how can you find me money? How can we get a small pool of money that the faculty of Cantor can apply for and do research that they're really interested in? But it's not an unusual challenge. It's a real challenge. Yes. Once you know what you want to do, we have in Fullerton, the faculty have the ability to access the grant database. We have this huge national database that the campus subscribes to. And so a faculty member who is interested in a topic can log on to the database and search by that topic and see if there is any grant, any agency that is interested in child abuse. And as a result of that search, it will come out with this long list of funding agencies and their grants and their grant cycles and when the deadlines are, and then you can go to any of those, you get the details, and maybe none of them work, maybe one of them works, and maybe you log on every month and you do that, and then out of the blue, one of those months, there it is. Some agency decided to fund exactly what you're interested in, and that's what we all have to do. We all do it. Want to take a break?
Do you want to take a break?
Yeah. Should we take a
Okay.
break? You want to ready for a break?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Thank
Sure.
you.